Coronation Street is preparing for another explosive chapter as Maggie Driscoll appears ready to make one final desperate move following the return of child predator Megan Walsh to Weatherfield. Maggie has already proven that she is willing to go to deadly lengths in order to protect the people she loves. However, the tragic irony is that the very family she fought to defend is now beginning to turn against her. With Megan returning and threatening the safety of Maggie's grandson once again, the question now hanging over the cobbles is terrifying. What happens when a dangerous woman feels she has absolutely nothing left to lose? During the dramatic Murder Week storyline, abusive villain Theo Silverton met his end, but Maggie herself also came frighteningly close to death. Following a tense confrontation with Megan that was interrupted by a deeply emotional and conflicted Will Driscoll, Maggie was later discovered collapsed and motionless on the ground by two young girls. Fortunately for Maggie, and unfortunately for Megan, the tough-talking landlady of the Rover's return proved far harder to kill than expected. Although she suffered a serious heart attack after the fall, she ultimately survived the ordeal. That survival spells serious trouble for Megan Walsh. Megan had secretly groomed Will into an illegal and deeply manipulative relationship while hiding in plain sight under Maggie's roof. When the police failed to gather enough evidence to officially charge Megan, Maggie decided to handle matters herself by attempting to intimidate a confession out of the manipulative predator. However, the confrontation spiraled completely out of control. After Maggie shoved Megan during the heated argument, Megan cleverly used the incident to deceive Will into believing the fall had caused her to miscarry their unborn baby. In reality, Megan had already undergone a secret termination without telling him. The devastating truth exploded into the open when Will interrupted the balcony confrontation between Megan and Maggie, leaving the emotionally vulnerable teenager even more confused and traumatized than before. Because of everything Will has endured, keeping the Driscoll family united has become more important than ever. Unfortunately, that unity now appears almost impossible to maintain. While Maggie recovered from her heart attack, Ben temporarily agreed to keep the peace for Will's sake and allowed a fragile truce to exist between them. That uneasy calm was shattered almost immediately after Will's mother, Melanie, learned that her son had been groomed by an athletics coach while living under Maggie's roof. Furious and heartbroken, Melanie became determined to remove Will from Weatherfield entirely by taking him to live with her in Scotland. To force Maggie into supporting her plan, Melanie resorted to blackmail. She threatened to expose the horrifying secret that Maggie had killed Ben's adoptive father, Allan, by pushing him down a staircase. Under mounting pressure and unable to hide the truth any longer, Maggie finally confessed everything to Ben last Thursday. The revelation completely devastated him. Although Maggie insisted Allan's death had been a tragic accident rather than intentional murder, Ben could not forgive her and ultimately threw her out of both the family and the Rover's return. As devastating as that situation already was, events are about to become even worse with Megan's release from custody. Before finally opening his eyes to Megan's manipulation, Will had originally planned to flee Weatherfield alongside her and begin a new life together in Paris. Tragically, he had no idea that Megan never intended to take him with her at all. She had secretly purchased only one plane ticket, for herself. Everything changed after an emotional conversation with Tim Metcalf, who shared his own painful experiences of being groomed by somebody he trusted when he was younger. Tim's honesty finally helped Will understand the reality of the abuse he had suffered, leading him to report Megan to the police and triggering her arrest. However, Megan's time behind bars does not last long. Upcoming Coronation Street scenes will show the manipulative pedophile being released on bail at precisely the moment Maggie's life is falling apart. The timing could not be more dangerous. Now viewers are left wondering whether Megan is returning to target Will once again, or whether she is coming back purely for revenge against Maggie. The tension escalates dramatically when Ben receives a phone call from the police informing him that Megan has officially been released on bail. His anger immediately boils over. Things become even more uncomfortable during a tense family lunch when Maggie unexpectedly arrives after being invited by Ollie. Ben is clearly furious by her presence. The atmosphere around the table quickly becomes unbearable until Ben finally tells Will that Megan has been released. Maggie reacts with horror and immediately promises Will that she will do everything possible to keep him safe. Coronation Street characters Eva Price and Ben Driscoll are about to face yet another emotional crisis, and this time the problem does not directly involve Will. Since relocating their family to Weatherfield last year, life has been anything but peaceful for Eva and Ben. The couple have struggled through relationship complications, clashes over business matters, ongoing health concerns, and a series of devastating family secrets that have completely changed their lives. Most recently, the family has been focused on supporting Will as he attempts to recover from the traumatic grooming abuse he suffered at the hands of his former sports coach, Megan Walsh. Although Will originally denied that anything inappropriate had happened between them, last week's dramatic episodes finally showed him accepting the truth and officially reporting Megan to the police. After Megan's arrest, Ben Driscoll and Eva Price were finally able to experience a brief sense of relief, hoping that Will could slowly begin rebuilding his life. However, upcoming scenes make it clear that moving forward after such trauma is far more difficult than either of them expected. In a newly released spoiler clip, Ben sits down with his emotionally exhausted son in the back room of the pub for a heartfelt and emotional conversation. During the discussion, Will apologizes for his recent angry outburst, while Ben gently reassures him and agrees to give him more space as he struggles to process everything he has been through emotionally. Shortly after Will leaves the room, Eva storms in, looking visibly frustrated, accompanied by her young daughter Susie. She immediately informs Ben that Susie has landed herself in trouble at school after throwing a fizzy drink bottle directly at the head of Bryn Winter Brown. Displaying the same bold attitude and confidence often associated with her mother, Susie cheekily responds, "What can I say? I'm a good shot." Naturally confused and concerned, Ben asks Susie why she would behave that way. Unfortunately, her explanation instantly leaves both adults furious. Susie reveals that Bryn had been teasing her repeatedly about Will, cruelly calling him a weirdo, and making comments about what supposedly happened between him and Megan. According to Susie, Bryn had even suggested that Will and Megan had been doing stuff together. The uncomfortable situation becomes even more emotional when Susie innocently asks Ben and Eva whether the rumors Bryn mentioned are actually true.